Isn't it funny that in the course of a college football season, one game could make or break your season? Welcome back to the Any Given Saturday podcast, where this could become your home of college football, a college football podcast made by the people for the people, as we're not afraid to talk about the little guys, as well as, of course, the big guys that make up this college football universe. We're closing in on a full month on the season. September may have shown some surprises, may have shown some disappointments along the way as well. We have some teams that maybe have been shown to be contenders, or maybe they'll be pretenders, but September is just one part of the equation. We're still a long college football season ahead of us. Still at least two more months of regular season action, and a lot of answers that need of some questions, right? So welcome back to Any Given Saturday podcast. We are here in recording this on October 2nd, and certainly some surprises here. We got a nice little podcast here this week as things are starting to not get as busy at work. I could not get a podcast out last week, and it sucks to see that, but I do plan on having two shows this week, one of which we're going to talk about a few games that happened over the course of last weekend that maybe might not be the biggest games that happened over the course of last weekend, but there were certainly three of the games that surprised me the most over the course of the Saturday slate. And we're also going to jump into showing off this top 25 power ratings. And these are power ratings that who would be favored over whom on a neutral side field. This is not how I would actually go about ranking these teams necessarily. But that being said, we'll show out what that top 25 power rating poll is looking like as we are moving into, I believe, is week number 6 of the college football season. And then, of course, we'll close things out with the start of the Wendy's 4-for-4 special. We're going to introduce a couple of games tonight. I won't show the whole thing, but there's some games that are going to be happening Wednesday through Friday that are going to be at least worth your attention, right? So got a lot happening here in this particular podcast, and I hope you guys are excited for it. If you are, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button for me, because what that does when you smack that like button is that you let me know that, hey, you really appreciate this podcast, and it gets it out to more college football fans like yourself. So I would truly appreciate that. From the very bottom of my heart, I would truly appreciate that. And then, of course, if this is a very small channel right now, would love to see you subscribe, become part of the journey as we embark on our first college football season, just kind of covering it in this hardcore state that we try to here on Any Given Saturday. But guys, we had a lot of action happening over the course of this weekend. And what that means is that we are closing in on about the halfway point of the college football season. And while I wasn't able to get Any Given Saturday top 25 out to you guys necessarily, I do want to provide the opportunity to try and go out and give you guys my thoughts on how I think that top 25 should be looking like from a power ratings perspective, right? So really excited to go ahead and show you these power ratings here extremely shortly. Now, that being said, I talked about this already, and I wanted to give this extreme disclaimer. These are not how I would rank the teams, okay? These power ratings, what they're supposed to show is it would determine who would be favored over whom on a neutral site field. That's what these power ratings are all about. So, got the disclaimer out of the way. Let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into it. What is that Any Given Saturday power ratings? What's that top 25 looking like as we move into week number 6? And we'll start from the bottom and work our way up. We got 25 to 21. We got two new teams that are entering the top 25 this week. Maryland is one of these teams. Maryland, they are my 24th best team in the country. They were not ranked. This is the first time that they've hopped into these power ratings for the entire season. And look, Maryland, you could say what you want about the schedule. I know they don't have the best schedule on the face of the planet, but that being said, Maryland, they've handled every opponent, and they've handled every opponent very convincingly, right? You want to talk about, their game against Michigan State or Virginia. as well as their other games that they've played, they have been a team that not only has won every single game so far this season, but they have constantly been able to cover the spread as well. That's the another big caveat in all of this. So Maryland, they're not ranked in the AP poll, but while we're on the topic of Maryland, I think we got to have the conversation that these guys should actually be ranked in the top 25. Their matchup this coming weekend against Ohio State should be a top 25 matchup. I think they're better than Louisville. I think they're also better than a Fresno State or a Missouri. None of these teams will show up in the top 25 poll. I think Maryland should be ranked in that 21 or 22 range, if we're being honest with ourselves. But they have a chance to silence those haters, silence the doubters wrong in that game against Ohio State this weekend. They could show that at least they can be competitive in that game. Maybe they can finally get some respect that they deserve. But we'll, of course, have to just wait and see what happens from there. At number 23, I got North Carolina. Now, North Carolina put together a solid performance, right? North Carolina did end up winning in the previous weekend. This was a team, played some pretty good ball overall. I'm looking for North Carolina. Or where was North Carolina? I don't think North Carolina played this past weekend. So, yeah, so North Carolina, I thought North Carolina played this past weekend, but maybe my memory does not serve me the most correctly. But here's the thing with North Carolina. I didn't move down North Carolina just because, I think they're a much lesser team than what they used to be. This is more because of the teams around them being a little bit more impressive than anticipated. Like Clemson, Texas A&M, Oregon State, and Kentucky also had great weekends as well. I'll talk about them more. I still have the same thoughts about North Carolina that I did 2 weeks ago. That's still a good team. And then Clemson, look, Clemson has lost a couple of games already, but Clemson's 2 losses are both to ranked teams. I think Duke, while not in this power rating system, I think Duke is a good football team. I do think that they're going to struggle a little bit without Riley Leonard. Hopefully, it's not a long-term injury. And then their other loss came against Florida State, which I still have Florida State highly regarded. They were on bye last weekend. I personally thought Syracuse was going to cover against Clemson. Clemson was a 6.5-point favorite, and not only did they cover convincingly. And these power ratings are built off based on expectations, right? So a 17-point win when you're just a 7-point favorite, for example, means a lot more than, say, if you're like a 30 to 35-point favorite and you only win by 17. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of bringing the method to the madness in terms of how these power ratings work. So yes, Clemson does have 2 losses, but I just have them as a top 25 team once again, handling their business on the road against Syracuse. Now we'll go ahead and move into the top 20 here, and a couple of changes of note in the top 20. At number 18, I have Utah here. Utah really needs Cam Rising to come back. I thought that Cam Rising was going to come back a week or maybe even a couple of weeks ago, but he once again did not play, and his presence was definitely missed. For sure. Utah did end up losing their first game of the season ultimately, and it was tough to watch. They only managed to score 7 points against Oregon State, and look, Oregon State I thought has a very good defense. Have one of the underrated coaching staffs from a defensive standpoint as well. But they need Cam Rising back. Otherwise, this is kind of how I feel about Utah for right now. Moving down from number 9 up to this number 18 spot. And likewise, I have Oregon State up to number 17 in the country. I have them ranked number 25 in my most recent power rating poll. And Oregon State have to have them moved up against Utah because we just saw these 2 teams play on the field up against each other, and Oregon State won 21-7. So gotta respect what happens on the field. So Oregon State, I do have because ahead of Utah because of that, especially if while we're waiting for Cam Rising to come back, if these 2 teams were to play again on a neutral site field, I would give the advantage to Oregon State because of the fact that they would have the advantage at quarterback. DJU is better than Nate Johnson, which not to say that Nate Johnson can't be a good quarterback someday. He's just very young and just doesn't have as much experience as DJU has. So then we'll move into the top 15 here. We're looking at 15 to 11. Kentucky, I've been higher on Kentucky than what a lot of people have had all year long, and that was validated by their big-time win over Florida. Really handled their business against Florida. Kentucky was only like a 2-point favorite against the Gators, even though this game was at home. I thought Kentucky was going to be able to cover that spread, and not only did they do that, they were blowing out Florida at some point. It was one of those games where it was really worse than what the score actually said. So kudos to Kentucky. They are still undefeated. I got them moved up to number 14 in the Any Given Saturday power ratings. They'll have a big time test against Georgia coming up here. And I think it's a real possibility that Kentucky could beat Georgia, especially if Georgia does not start fast. That has been a problem for the Georgia Bulldogs in conference play. They started slow against South Carolina. They've also started slow against Auburn last weekend as well. So that's something to certainly watch out for. USC down 7 spots to number 13. USC probably has one of the best offenses in the entire country. It's at least a top 5 offense, if not the number 1 offense in America. Caleb Williams will probably be the front runner to win the Heisman Trophy. But that defense was why I did not pick USC to ultimately win the Pac-12 and go to the college football playoff at the end of the day. USC defensively, you thought with the additions to the transfer portal that things could have changed. Those changes have not gone to fruition. They gave up 28 last week to Arizona State, and then their most recent game against Colorado, they gave up 41, and that was even with Shadir Sanders not having his full complement of weapons. Travis Hunter is still hurt. He is dealing with his liver injury, his central body injury that he suffered in the Colorado State game. USC, I'm really concerned about defensively. It's a Caleb Williams injury away from going to a really minuscule bowl game. So USC, they're still undefeated, but I'm certainly concerned about USC moving forward. And then Michigan, one of my higher risers of the week. I moved them up 8 spots up to number 11. They finally showed up to play. They played up against Nebraska, and Michigan manhandled Nebraska. That was a team that got up and came ready to play. That Joe Harbaugh coaching this team up was really a difference here. We didn't see the type of focus in that high-level play that we saw in the first few weeks of the season, whether it be against UNLV or Bowling Green or Eastern Carolina. But Michigan's starting to wake up a little bit, and they'll have some games down the road, Penn State, Ohio State, and Maryland. So their schedule's going to get tougher, but Michigan seems like a team that is beginning to start its peak at the right time. And now we go into the top 10. Top 10, not a lot of change here in the top 10 as of right now. I still have Florida State at number 6. They were on bye. Texas is going to have a interesting game on its hands against Oklahoma. That could be a possible game of the year. I'm really excited about that Oklahoma game. We will preview that later this week, just not in this particular pod. Notre Dame really navigating its very difficult part in their schedule extremely well. They beat a ranked Duke team on the road. They should have beaten Ohio State, but unfortunately some critical errors towards the end prevented that from happening. Ohio State snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. And then again, they're going to go on the road against Louisville. Louisville just got themselves ranked in the top 25, and Louisville is going to give Notre Dame its best shot. This is going to be one of the bigger games that Louisville plays this season because of how their schedule is set up. Notre Dame, they still have some other games they got to play, like a Clemson, like a USC as well. So We'll see how Notre Dame handles this game, see if they can maintain the focus. Marcus Freeman, of course, seems to have improved as a coach overall from year 1 to year number 2, but that is something to monitor. And then rounding out your top 10, you got Alabama at 9, Tennessee at number 10. But that SEC is looking pretty open in terms of who could possibly win the SEC championship this year. And finally, we do have your top 5. I do have a brand new number 1. Washington did fall down a couple of spots for me, down to number 3. Didn't provide the best performance against Arizona, but they still found a way to win. You can't have your best day every single day. Oregon has looked pretty dominant, a team that could not only make the college football playoff, but maybe could make some noise as well. Penn State did what they were supposed to do against Northwestern. Ohio State, they were on by no change in their actual power rating number. They moved up a spot because of what Washington did in terms of not meeting those expectations. Oklahoma, on the other hand, won by 30 against Iowa State. They are my new number 1 team in the country. We'll see how long they can hold that mantle and see if they can prove that, as they will take on Texas in the Red River rivalry. And that's, like I said, I think it's going to be a really entertaining football game that we're going to really look forward to watch. So that covers the entirety of the top 25 as of right now. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section, what your thoughts are in terms of my power rating top 25. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down in that comment section. I always appreciate that input. So now we actually go ahead and start talking about some of the games that happened over the course of this weekend, and something that I always like to do when it comes to game recaps. I don't always gravitate towards the biggest games that happen over the course of the weekend, right? I'm always more gravitated towards the results that really surprise me the most. So that in mind, we'll go ahead and start diving into that now. 3 games that I really was intrigued by in terms of what that final score said, comparing to maybe what the expectations were in this particular game. First, we'll start things out with the Big Ten. And we got 2 teams in the Big Ten West that played this past weekend in West Lafayette, Indiana. Illinois was going on the road to play up against Purdue. Both teams have not won a game in conference play prior to the start of this ball game. But this was an interesting game. So the line, according to Caesars, it finalized as an even. So it was essentially a pick'em game. So it really could have gone in either direction, but I don't think anyone was really predicting a blowout by either team. Purdue made it a blowout in the second half, right? Now, Purdue, they do have a brand new coach, Ryan Walters. He's taking over after the previous coach did head down to Louisville. The Louisville coach now has his guys at 5-0. It took a while for Purdue to get going in terms of playing at that highest level necessarily. It took 4.5 games to do it, but in that second half, I think Purdue played at its highest level the entire season, and we saw what this team could have been capable of when it's rolling on all cylinders. This is a team that could make some noise in the Big Ten West. It is a weaker division than the Big Ten East, obviously. I think no one is really disputing that at this point. Last year, by the way, that we have divisions in the Big Ten with USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon. Those 4 teams who all ranked, or should be ranked, by the way, they are all coming to the Big Ten. So the divisions will be no more. So in terms of making it to a conference championship, this is the last best shot for any team in the Big Ten West. So what happened in this game? How did this end up turning into the blowout that it turned out to be? Well, it starts with their quarterback, Hudson Card. He finally found a rhythm on that Saturday afternoon in West Lafayette, Indiana. Hudson Card threw multiple touchdown passes to start that third quarter. One to Devin Maccabee, one to Dylan Downing, and another one to Tyrone J.C. Jr. Big performance there by Hudson Card there. Best performance of the season. Was efficient with the ball too. 18 for 26, 217 yards, 2 touchdown passes. Like I said, that was his highest rated game this season. His rating of 164.7 was the highest. Took care of the ball too. No turnover, so you love to see that. One of the higher completion percentages too. So Hudson Card, first and foremost, took real good care of the football, and this was the best game that we saw Hudson Card play as a Boilermaker. As you may know, Hudson Card spent his first 3 seasons at the University of Texas, had some time in mop-up, basically in backup duties to Quinn Ewers, and then transferred to Purdue with Peyton Manning's nephew coming to Texas, Archie Manning. His name was escaping me for a split second. And this was a big game for both teams. I mean, Wisconsin, they were off this week. They're currently at the top of the Big Ten West as of right now. They are 1-0. So Purdue winning this game keeps them in the hunt in terms of that Big Ten West moving forward. Certainly still a winnable division. No one is a clear-cut favorite, I would say, to win the West just yet. So keep an eye on that race in the Big Ten West to see what happens there. So, but what also happened other than Hudson Card playing one of his better games in a Purdue jersey? Illinois had way too many miscues in this game. Illinois in this game had 9 penalties. They also allowed 5 sacks as well. They turned over the football multiple times. They fumbled the ball 3 times. Thankfully, only one of those turns into fumble loss. Don't know how that happens, but they got lucky on that front. Not so lucky is on third downs. On third downs, Illinois was just 1 for 13. So they shot themselves in the foot multiple times, and Illinois is just not good enough of a football team to have all of those errors and still expect to compete in games, let alone win games. I think we're starting to see that maybe that team that we saw in that last third of the season is more indicative of what they are as a program compared to that strong start that they had at the beginning of last season. They don't have that same level of NFL talent that's on the roster. Notably, Devin Witherspoon was on this team last year. But yeah, that was a rough look for Illinois. So what also happened in this game? Yeah, it was the miscues that was the biggest difference. Total yards about the same. Purdue had just over 400 yards. Illinois with 375, and the same number of turnovers. Time of possession was actually kind of similar too. Purdue had the edge. They handled the ball for roughly 32 minutes in this game, compared to Illinois' 28. So that was really the big thing. Was just too many mistakes, too many miscues, and because of that, this is actually a little bit of a rivalry game, a little bit of a trophy game involved. 4th year in a row, Purdue is going to reclaim the cannon. So that's going back to Purdue's campus. And Brett Bielema, he needs to find some answers and find them pretty quickly, because it's not going to get that much easier. I'll kind of lie to better. So Illinois, so what's happening for them moving forward? They will go back home. They'll take on Nebraska. Nebraska also got shell-shocked by Michigan, so it could be a little bit of a get-right game. Nebraska has not won a single game in Big Ten conference play yet. As for Purdue could put themselves in the thick of the Big Ten West conversation, depending on what they do next weekend themselves. Because Purdue, they go on the road. They're going to take on Iowa. Iowa has not been the most consistent team offensively this season. So they can find a way to score against that vaunted Iowa defense. Maybe they can find a way to win that game, but Purdue will likely be considered an underdog in that matchup. That is expected to happen over in Kinnick Stadium. One last thought that I did have, Luke Altmaier. He was okay in this game. 16 for 23 for 25, 202 yards, a touchdown. Isaiah Williams went off. He had 6 catches for 113 yards, but just simply wasn't enough as Illinois could not find any offensive rhythm, particularly in that second half of the ball game. But now that I'm thinking about the Midwest a little bit, there was another Midwestern team that was not playing in conference play, but they were actually experienced non-conference action against a bigger conference team. Bowling Green. Bowling Green was actually on the road. They were taking on Georgia Tech. Here's the craziest thing about this game. So Georgia Tech was listed as a 21-point favorite at home, as this game was at Bobby Dobbs Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. Beautiful backdrop for a stadium, by the way. One of the underrated backdrops. Georgia State has that similar feel as well, as they're also in Atlanta. Now, if I told you that this was an 11-point win, you would think like, okay, Georgia Tech won, but they got some things that they gonna have to work on as they got through the meat of conference play. No, Georgia Tech did not win this game, so they were a 21-point favorite, and they lost by double digits. This was actually also keeping in mind that Georgia Tech did score a touchdown late in the game. They had a touchdown with 1:35 left to go. So we're looking at Bowling Green at some point with an 18-point lead before at the end of the third quarter. Tough day, a really tough day for Georgia Tech. And here's the thing. It was not Georgia Tech started off extremely fast. They started off extraordinarily fast. They actually scored the first 14 points of the game. That's the crazy part. We had a 53 Haynes King, like he was really feeling himself at the start of this game. Within the first 6 minutes, he had 2 passing touchdowns. Like he was feeling himself, man. He was feeling extremely good. But after that, what happened afterwards just was completely shocking. Bowling Green scored the next 38 points. They scored the next 30, they had 38 unanswered points on the road against Georgia Tech. Like, you can't win like that. You could not win like that at all. And you want to talk about insult to injury, Georgia Tech, they were wearing their Black Watch uniforms as a nod to like the Black Watch defenses of the 1980s. Even with Bill Curry attending, he was a former coach back in the 1980s. Their effort in that game did not inspire any comparisons to those stingy units. And one big reason for that, Bowling Green was able to find quite a bit of balance. Tyrion Stewart, running back for Bowling Green, he was able to run for 138 yards and a touchdown. And then their quarterback, Connor Basilick, very strong game. One of the better games that he had against an FBS opponent. 21 for 32, 263 yards, got a touchdown as well. He took real good care of the football. This was a great game for Connor Basilick in this one. Yeah, it's just, Scott Loafer, the head coach of Bowling Green, he said it perfectly. When our mind is right, when our heart is right, we're doing the things the right way, we're all right, and we're pretty good. So he's saying that Bowling Green is better than what the record says. And looking, Bowling Green, they had a little bit of a difficult non-conference schedule. They took on Liberty. Liberty is a team that is quickly turning into a possible favorite to win Conference USA. You also have Michigan. Michigan is in the top 5 right now. They're coming off of 2 straight playoff appearances, and it just all happened to come together against Georgia Tech. So just a little bit of a baffling result here. So what else happened? What else happened in this game? Because Haynes, like I said, Haynes King started off extraordinarily well in the game. Like his first couple of drives, it was 5 for 5, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like you couldn't ask for anything else. It's just after that, they just couldn't do anything with it until it was too late. King ended up with 23 for 37, 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, multiple interceptions too. That's another thing that I wanted to harp on. They were just not careful enough with the football there. They turned the ball over 3 times. When you turn the ball over 3 times, you're going to put yourself in some bad positions. And not only that, Bowling Green themselves, no turnovers. Not a single turnover in the game. And another thing that really happened is that Bowling Green, they held the ball extensively. Bowling Green held the ball for nearly 43 minutes in this game. Out of 60 minutes, Bowling Green had the ball for nearly 3/4 of the game. When you keep the ball out of the other team's hands, that's a big recipe for success. If you have a 40-20 split, that's really good. That's how the Tennessee Titans were able to blow out the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday. I hate saying that as a Cincinnati sports fan, but that's a big reason why Tennessee was able to blow out Cincinnati. They never allowed the Bengals to find any offensive rhythm. It was kind of a similar story after they were able to make some adjustments after that 14-0 deficit that they did end up facing early on. But what else happened? The Falcons, they found a way to convert 3rd downs and extend drives. You don't have the time possession advantage that you saw Bowling Green have if it wasn't for their ability to convert 3rd downs. They were so successful in 3rd downs, matter of fact. They were 7 for 11 on 3rd down plays. That was in the first half, and then they end up going 10 for 16 for the game. So that's the thing. You know, it's not that Bowling Green was able to consistently have these big plays, with the exception of a 45-yard interception return, but that's by their defense. Out of all the scores that Bowling Green had, none of them were from more than 20 yards out, unless you call it for a field goal. So it wasn't like Bowling Green was bashing Georgia Tech down the field. They were just extending drives, just making the plays that were required, and just playing generally smart football moving forward. So for Georgia Tech, this is certainly embarrassing for them, and it's not going to get any easier for Georgia Tech moving forward. They did split their first couple of ACC games, but it's going to get ramped up really quickly. They got to play on the road next weekend. But not only does Georgia Tech go on the road next weekend, they're taking on a number 18 ranked Miami team. We saw how we feel about them in the power rating. I think they're closer to being a top 10 team than what people realize. Georgia Tech's got to figure some things out and figure things out quickly. Otherwise, this could very well turn into a bloodbath, right? And then for Bowling Green, great win for Bowling Green. Completely hats off to the Bowling Green Falcons, okay? Bowling Green, here's the thing with Bowling Green. Prior to this game, they took on Ohio, the Ohio Bobcats, which that could be a upper echelon team in that MAC conference. They were blown out by Ohio. They lost to Ohio. It was like 38-7. We'll check real quick to see if I have that. Yeah, 38-7 that Bowling Green lost to Ohio, and that was at home. So definitely unexpected. Definitely was surprised by this final result. So Bowling Green, they'll take on Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio was a pretty exciting team. Other than the loss that the Redhawks had to the other Miami team down in Florida, they're on a 4-game winning streak right now. So Bowling Green's riding high. Miami of Ohio, they're hot too. This could be an intriguing game to watch if you pay attention to the smaller conferences. We'll see if Bowling Green can carry that momentum moving forward and have that consistency. And that's why they're 2-3 right now. This could be the ceiling that Bowling Green has against this Georgia Tech team. But what's the difference between like a 4-8 team and an 8-4 team is, how consistent could you be? And then one final note about this game was that Georgia Tech in the last 7 years, they're going to fall to 1-2 against the MAC conference. This is their second loss against a team from the MAC in the last 3 years. They do have a win against Bowling Green when they previously played them in 2018. That was 63-17, but then they lost to NIU 22-21 back in 2021, a year after the aforementioned COVID year. So Georgia Tech going to be in wounded animal mode, and they'll have their hands full against a Miami team. We'll see if both of these teams continue their trajectory as we get in to the month of October, moving ever closer to Halloween. But one more game that I wanted to talk about here tonight, and this was a game that I'm sure quite a few of you probably did not watch at any point because we still had the Ole Miss LSU game going on, and then we also had the Notre Dame and Duke game happening at the same time. Air Force was at home. They were hosting a fellow conference opponent in San Diego State. And guys, you want to talk about a team that could possibly be one of the best group of 5 teams in America right now? This Air Force team, they just bully people, man. Listen to what Air Force has done since starting conference play. Ever since they had that ugly win against Sam Houston, they beat Utah State by 17. They blow out San Jose State while being on the road by 25. And then they're going to cap it off with San Diego State. They had them at home. San Diego State known to be one of the better defensive teams in the Mountain West. And Air Force simply did not give a single damn about that. Air Force won 49-10. Air Force is a team that should be getting more recognition by the AP poll. Like, if you're going to rank Fresno State, I mean, Air Force has to be right up there with them. Personally, and this could be a little bit of a hot take, I think Air Force is a little bit better than Fresno State. I truly, from the bottom of my heart, believe that right now. This could be a team to certainly watch out for winning the Mountain West. But let me get off of my soapbox about Air Force disrespect. What happened in this game? Air Force, they just do what they typically do. And here's the thing, too. This game started pretty slowly. This was a little bit of a slower game overall. Because neither team scored in the first quarter of action. It actually took till like a couple minutes into the second quarter till we finally saw points. And it wasn't even Air Force that did that. San Diego State was actually the first team to get up on the scoreboard. But then Air Force is like, all right, let me just lean up in my gaming chair real quick, and got it going after San Diego State got their little 7-0 lead, because Air Force answers back with 3 straight touchdown drives after that. Cade Harris got the goose egg on the scoreboard for Air Force. And then you got Michael. That dude, he went in, had touchdown runs of 2 and 3 yards, created that 21-7 advantage. And then after that, after that 7-0 lead, Air Force was just all Air Force, right? Zach Warrior, he had a 54-yard touchdown. That made it 28-7. And the way that Air Force plays at that point, it's just barbecue chicken after that. And here's the thing. Warrior just does an effective job running the option. He ended up being a guy that had over 100 yards passing and 100 yards rushing. He ended up with 8 carries for 103 yards in this game. So just is very good at running that triple option that, like many military academies do choose to run, because they can't go after the same kids that many other Division I football programs can go after because they're more concerned as an institution creating the next generation of military officers, right? So they have to do things a little differently, but Air Force is the best at it as of right now. Just look at any metric that Air Force and San Diego State had in this particular game. It's just a complete domination across the board. Passing. Air Force passed the ball 7 total times in this game. Zach Lear made the most of them. 6 for 7, 189 yards. That's more passing yards than what San Diego State had in this game. And they passed the ball actually more than 3 times the number of times that Air Force threw the football. They were just a lot more effective at it. And that's the thing with triple options. If you're able to get that running game going, it really makes defenses vulnerable against those play action passes or just general passes, because you get to a point where you got to put 8 or 9 guys in the box, and then you can just open it up over the top and just run beautifully, run efficiently. Speaking of that running game, Air Force dominated on the ground as well. Air Force had 287 yards on the ground in this game. San Diego State only had 105. They were held to 3.5 yards rushing. Penalties, they only had 1 penalty. It was like an offsides penalty that went for like 5 yards. San Diego State was more penalized. They had 5 penalties for 34 yards. And then also to top it off, Air Force took care of the football. They did not turn the ball over at all, while San Diego State, they had an interception. So that was the only turnover in this game. One thing that I was surprised about was that while Air Force won the time of possession, they didn't dominate the time of possession, to say the least. Air Force did win time of possession at 32 minutes in the game, while Air Force's opponent, San Diego State, they ended up with about 28 minutes. So not a drastic difference in terms of what's happening with the time possession thing. But the Aztecs, they are reeling right now. There was a team that was off 2-0 start, and then they got into the more difficult parts of conference play. And granted, San Diego State, I don't think anyone was expecting them to beat UCLA or Oregon State, but rough start for the Aztecs here. They're now 0-2 in Mountain West Conference play, and that's a bigger deal because I believe the Mountain West does not have divisions anymore. I know that they had divisions back in NCAA 14, but yeah, it looks like divisions are gone like a girl in a country song right now. So San Diego State, they're still looking for that first conference win of the season. Now, the other games that they have coming up right now, those games are all, I would all say, are winnable games, right? That for San Diego State moving forward. So they're on the road against Hawaii, but that's in a couple of weeks from now. So they'll be able to rest, get themselves right physically, mentally, and emotionally. Then they'll have a winnable game against Hawaii. Then they'll take on Nevada, who I think is one of the worst teams in the country right now. They're power rated in the 130s. I think UMass might be the only team that's worse. UTEP is definitely down there too. The only other games I could see them struggling to win could be Fresno State, but that's towards the end of the season. But a lot of time to get right. While they're not completely out of the Mountain West Conference race, they put themselves in a hole, and they will essentially also need to win out in order to go ahead and make it to that Mountain West Conference Championship, or win next 5 of 6 if they want to secure bowl eligibility too. Now, as for Air Force, and the beautiful thing about Air Force's schedule from here on out is that Air Force, they at least avoid Fresno State. Now, we'll have a pretty intriguing game in a couple of weeks for the Falcons. Air Force in a couple of weeks will play Wyoming. That is at home. And then their other 2 non-conference games are going to be against the military academies for that Commanders Cup, on the road against Navy, at home against Army. The one game of note that they have, it's towards the end of the year. They're taking on Boise State, November 24th. It's the last game of the season. Boise State, a team that I think at the beginning of the year could win the Mountain West. We'll see how that holds into fruition, but that could be a key game in terms of who makes it to the Mountain West Championship as well. But I'm looking at these other games on their schedule. At Colorado State, at Hawaii versus UNLV. I think they'll be favored, and I think they should win those games as well. And more importantly, I think Air Force could show themselves as a team that is one of the best group of 5 teams in college football, that when we start getting through the process of seeing the college football playoff top 25, that Air Force should belong in there at some point in this season. So great win by Air Force. This is certainly a Falcons team that you should keep an eye on as we get into the second half of the season. So that just leaves us, now that we made it through the 3 games that I really wanted to talk about in terms of what surprised me the most over the course of this previous college football weekend. Didn't get to do this a couple of weeks last week. I was really broken about that. We have a lot of college football, or at least days in which there's going to be some college football on. This is the most extensive slate in terms of days in which we're going to have college football since the very first week of the season. I think back in that first week of the season, we had games from Friday through Monday. Kind of a similar type of thing here. We have college football games starting on Wednesday. So depending on when you see this podcast, hoping I can get it out either tomorrow or Wednesday. I'm recording this on October 2nd, which is why I wanted to note that definitely want to get this first one out as soon as I can so that I can show you guys some the Wendy's 4 for 4 special. So the Wendy's 4 for 4 special, if you guys don't remember, is I show you guys my 4 best bets that I'm definitely thinking about locking in over the course of the college football weekend. Now, we have 4 days this week, so I kind of want to give like my best bet for every single day, if applicable. Like if there's like, for example, like Friday, if there's not a bet on Friday that I really like in either the I think it's the Kansas State or Oklahoma State game or Illinois and Nebraska, then we'll pull from Saturday because Saturday is the most extensive. But that being said, Wednesday and Thursday, we'll dive right into it. These are the 2 bets that I'm looking for in terms of maybe being the most likely to be successful. So let's jump right into that. We're going to start with Wednesday and Thursday. A great standalone for Conference USA. Wednesday in particular, there's no other football happening. So if you're a degenerate like myself, definitely keep an eye out for Conference USA on Wednesday and Thursday. So that being said, best bet on Wednesday for me, I'm looking at the under of 51.5. That's what's added on FanDuel as of this morning. So here's the thing with Jacksonville State. Okay, so far Jacksonville State has played 4 FBS games. We're not going to worry about their game against East Tennessee State, but Jacksonville State, in their 4 first FBS games, they're 3-1, but the under is hit in 3 of those 4 games. The only exception is that Sam Houston State game. That was a 35-28 victory against Sam Houston State. The Bearcats, the Texas Bearcats, one of the worst FBS teams, maybe not quite as ready for the higher end of Division I football as of right now. They're going on the road. They're taking on Mid-Tennessee State. And Mid-Tennessee State has struggled to score in their FBS matchups as well. Their only win is against Murray State, but this is what their total scores are in their FBS games. 7 points to Alabama, 19 to Missouri, 23 to Colorado State, and then most recently this past weekend, I believe that was on a Thursday night, Western Kentucky, they scored 10 points against Western Kentucky. So this is a Mid-Tennessee State team that is not necessarily the most explosive. And then other than that East Tennessee State game, Jacksonville State, well, it's possible that they could be turning a corner as well. Not quite as sure if that's some more of a consistency thing where they're turning a corner around, or is it one of those things where they had to do that in order to win the game. But I think Jacksonville State would prefer this game to be a little bit more low scoring. So that being said, I'm going to go with the under of 51.5. I think that's a little high considering what these two offenses have done between these two teams. If you want that 51.5 to go over, you need both teams to score 26 points essentially. And between these two teams, that's only happened one time in 8 FBS games between these two squads. And that was Jacksonville State last weekend against Sam Houston State. I'm going the under at 51.5. Now, as for the other game that I'm keeping an eye on, we're going to Thursday now. More Conference USA action at this point. This is a line that started at 17.5. I believe it's now up to 18.5, but we still like it though. It's Liberty going and hosting the Sam Houston Bearcats. We talked about Sam Houston earlier. Sam Houston is winless. And not only is Sam Houston winless, they've only scored 5 total touchdowns the entire season. Big yikes, considering it's been 4 games that this has happened. But Liberty, on the other hand, Liberty is rolling, particularly in this last couple of weeks. Couple of road games. They took on Buffalo. They took on Florida International. They blew out Buffalo, and then they blew out Florida International as well. So this Liberty team is rolling in the deep like Adele right now. And this is quickly turning into a team, another team that could make some noise and force themselves into this conversation for being one of the best group of 5 teams. I think Liberty could certainly force themselves in there. And here's the thing with Liberty's schedule. This schedule is very navigatable. I see them being a favorite in every single game that they have for the rest of the year. So certainly possible for Liberty to be 12-0 at the end of the regular season. That includes a road game against Western Kentucky, who I have as winning the entire conference, but I clearly slept on Liberty. That being said, Sam Houston, they have struggled in their transition to the FBS level. Liberty, on the other hand, first time in Conference USA in their first year. They're looking to win the thing, and I think they're going to continue that by sending a message to this Sam Houston team. So we're going to go with this 18.5 that Liberty is favored by, and we're going to let it ride, baby. I think Liberty is going to blow out Sam Houston. This could get very ugly very fast, especially if Sam Houston doesn't start very well, which they haven't in most of the games that they played this season. So we're going with Liberty at the minus 18.5. But that, I think, wraps it up here for this edition of the Any Given Saturday podcast. One, keep it a little bit on the shorter end. We're probably closing in on about an hour, but don't worry. We're planning on having more coming up in the near future. Definitely want to preview, Oklahoma, Texas, LSU at Missouri, Georgia, taking on the number 1 team in the land according to the AP, the Georgia Bulldogs, and of course Notre Dame taking on Louisville. We're going to preview all of those games in the next podcast, if I can get a second podcast out. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you made it all the way through this podcast, by the way, I truly appreciate that. And you can continue to show that appreciation towards me by hitting that like button for me real fast. Hitting that like button shows that, hey, you appreciate my content, and also gets it out to more college football fans like yourself And then on top of that, you have a real opportunity to be an A1 since day one, you guys. You have an opportunity to be one of the first subscribers, to be a part of the Any Given Saturday community. You could do that by just going over to that little right-hand side. It's right next to the like button. Hit that subscribe button. It only takes a couple of seconds, but I don't have much of a voice left, so I am going to sign off. I hope you guys all have a wonderful night. Remember, we do have college football on Wednesday, so the football, it is not too far away from our enjoyment. Remember that as you try to make it through the rest of this week. But until then, I am signing off. I am your host, Jake, and I'm hoping you're all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.